What's up, Warrior Saints? Hey, how you doing on this What's Up Wednesday? Glad to have you beautiful people in with us as we continue to discuss the crisis of masculinity. It's a really upside down age, an upside down time, and men don't really know what to do with themselves because we're told that the qualities that make a man, a true man, are bad. And we ask ourselves, are they? Because we feel inside us like they're not. I mean, being strong, being courageous, being a provider, a protector, someone who's genteel, diplomatic, but also a man of faith, someone who can not be nice, because we don't always want to be nice, but can be kind and respectful and compassionate. I mean, the battle that's raging is right now, it's inside the heart of men. And our fellas know it, which is why we find so darn many young men who are lost, living in their mom's basement, watching porn, playing video games with no jobs and no woman, no future, right? And we also find our women who are out there saying, where are all the men, right? I know that it seems like politically correct to want a soft and sensitive man, but nobody wants that. The men don't want to be that way, and the women don't really want to be that way. And if I'm the only one that's got the guts to say that and admit it, then please pray for me that God gives me the strength, because I'm not going to stop saying it. You don't have to say out loud you agree with me, but I know you do, because there is a crisis in masculinity. The way to overcome that, this is what we've been teaching, and this is what we work so hard at the Warrior Saints movement. At warriorsaints.org, we have a library there, and we've shifted our focus to dealing with the crisis of masculinity by teaching how to become warrior saints, real men and women of God, Christ-like warrior saints who are crucifixional, sacrificing in our lives for the sake of other. And there are 4 attributes or qualities or 4 pillars that we got to address about conquering the crisis of masculinity. The first is being a king. If you didn't watch it, that was yesterday's episode. Today we're going to talk about number 2, being a knight. Being a knight. And when you think about a knight, you think about someone in armor with a fancy helmet, maybe riding on a horse with a lance, and ancient England or whatever you think about, the medieval times, and sometimes the knights are the heroes of the story, but sometimes they're evil and dark and all that kind of stuff. But really, the qualities of a knight are important for us as we are trying to overcome the crisis of masculinity. Knights were known. Not everyone was perfect. So don't pull out, on quote on my, put notes on my page about, well, in history, it's look, that knights were supposed to be strong men, right? Not just muscles, but strong constitutions, willing to stand up for something they believed in. First, they had values, and they believed in them, and they stood up for them, and they were even willing to die for them, right? They were protectors. They took care of their castles and their women and their children and all of the people on their in their castle, on their farm, whatever, on their land. They built walls, literally, but also figuratively, to protect against assault from the enemy. They were also men of faith. Like, knights were supposed to be God-fearing men, right? I know, the current, environment, if you will, in movie making in Hollywood is to show how Christian knights were evil and wicked and just out for themselves. And I'm sure historically there were some. But knights as a whole, historically, not Hollywoody, but historically, were men of faith. They believed. I mean, look, as good or as bad as you may say the Crusades were, those men, some of them may have been misguided for sure, or misled or lied to. The knights who went, they went because they were thinking, maybe duped, but they were thinking that this was a war for God. Now, probably the first mistake is to say that it was a war for God, because God is not really a fan of war. But the idea that I want to impart is that they went because they had faith. They believed in God. All of these castles didn't just have the palace where the king was. They had a chapel, right? Or a church, whatever you would call it, a cathedral. In their cities, the knights would have a house for themselves and a house for God, and very often they were right next to each other and connected. Knights were also men of wisdom and understanding, right? They had to learn and read and study. I could go on and on and on. The reason I talk about knighthood is because the strength, the provision, and the protection, the honesty, the integrity, the diplomacy, these are qualities that men, true men, must embrace and embody if we are to be warrior saints, right? And like I say, there's a world out there that's trying really hard to pull us away from that. Like you've all heard that phrase, toxic masculinity, because somehow being a man, being a masculine man, like a rugged mountain man, is somehow a bad thing. Now, there are ways that it can be bad. Obviously, abusing people is never good. God help you if I ever hear you abuse your wife, right? Like, I'll come find you, right? That's not acceptable. It's not tolerable. We don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't steal. We're supposed to be men of integrity, right? But those things are not bad. Masculinity, being ferocious male, strong, wanting to go out and, like to conquer and to conquer, as we hear from the book of Revelation, right? Like we are supposed to be lions, right? And it is not bad. It is not bad if we are that way. But how do we do that in a Christ-like way so that we don't get lost in some of the legitimate criticisms of society? So let me take this very quick excursus. There are some criticisms, like we talked about abusing domestic violence, abusing your wife or family or whatever. There are some criticisms against a toxic masculinity that are legit. So how do we not fall into that? How do we become strong and ferocious but not fall into those legitimate criticisms? We do that by being a warrior saint. That's the whole point, the whole message. If you visit warriorsaints.org, if you visit this website, you're going to have access to a couple of things. The first of them is you can get the book, The Way of the Warrior Saint. This is going to be it's seminal work, man. It's foundational. It's going to lay down the principles of what crucifixional living means and how we live it. If you haven't read this, I encourage you to do it. It's really good. It's super readable. You'll read it in one day if you sit and give yourself the time to do it. Secondly, you can subscribe to The Way of the Warrior Saint, which is our online database, our online library filled with teachings that are now going to be singularly focused on helping males become men. If you're a fella struggling with it, you know that you want to be masculine, but you know you're like questioning because is it wrong to do that? This is for you. Ladies, you have a fella who needs a little work, maybe a son who needs a little work, get them on The Way of the Warrior Saint. It's $8. So come on. If you're watching this, you're watching it on a device, which means you have $8. It's not about money for us. It's about saying don't let anything keep it from you. Don't let you stay away from this, right? Get on The Way of the Warrior Saint, and let's start helping those males become men. We love you, beautiful people. We're going to be back tomorrow to talk about Pillar 3, what it means to be a mentor. And until then, as always, keep walking on the way of the Warrior Saint.